Welcome to the Personal Injury Marketing Minute, where we quickly cover the hot topics in the legal marketing world. I'm your host, Lindsay Busfield. As I have mentioned a few times over the course of the podcast, I am a proud graduate of Center College, which is a small liberal arts school in Danville, Kentucky. While I was there, I got a degree in philosophy, which is a great stepping stone to either become an attorney or a barista at Starbucks. Much to my parents' chagrin, I went the Starbucks route before meandering my way back into the legal field. While I didn't take the most direct path, Center prepared me for the journey, as it has prepared so many others. Joining me today are a few distinguished Center College alumni who have pursued careers in law. We'll discuss their time at Center, what made it special, how it challenged them, and the ways it prepared them for law school and beyond. From the classroom to the courtroom, we'll explore the skills, mentorship, and experiences that set them on the path to their legal success. Thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
Well, I want to first acknowledge the people that we have here on our panel. We have Ashley Eklund, Zach Shewmaker, Barrett Freeman, and Andrew Mize. So I want to take a second and let you guys introduce yourselves and where you're from and what you're practicing now. So Andrew, why don't you go ahead and give us a little introduction to yourself?
All right. Well, thank you so much, Lindsay. As you said, I'm Andrew Mize, and I'm a Center graduate, 2008. Today I live in Louisville, Kentucky, so I haven't gone that much far afield. I graduated law school 2011 from University of Louisville, and began my practice right out of the gate. Today I practice with Strange, Jennings and Garvey, that's headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee, and primarily do plaintiff side class action litigation, also lots of complex cases and personal injury like medical malpractice. So that's kind of the scope of the practice today.
That's great. And Barrett, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Uh-oh, it looks like Barrett might have frozen up a little bit.
Am I back?
You're back now. Yeah, go ahead.
Am I back?
You
Okay,
are
great,
back.
great. I had to switch off of the Wi-Fi because I'm Barrett Freeman. I practice here in Corbin, Kentucky. I do personal injury on the plaintiff side. I kind of feel like I'm introducing myself at a deposition. I practice with Freeman and Childers, and I've been an attorney for 12 years. I graduated from Center in 2009, and then I went to Arizona Summit School of Law, where I graduated. It no longer exists anymore. So it actually lost its credibility and accreditation, but both about 3 years ago. But I got what I needed, I got my degree, and now I've been practicing. So that's my background.
I'm sure that there is a story in there somewhere, and maybe we'll get to that in a few minutes. But Zach, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
My best friend actually got me a Hogwarts School of Law hat the year that it actually went under. I love that.
That's awesome.
You got sorted elsewhere, it seems.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm Lindsay. Thanks for having us. I'm Zach Shewmaker. I grew up in Danville. I went to Danville High School, graduated in 99. Went to Center, graduated in 03. Went to UGA Law and graduated in 06. And I've been practicing in Atlanta since then. I did defense work for about 7 or 8 years and then moved over to the plaintiff side. And then I opened my own plaintiff's firm in 2019. And I've been practicing in Atlanta exclusively in personal injury since 2013, but owning my own firm since 19.
Yeah, so you've seen a little bit of both sides of the story there.
Yeah, I've played both sides and I've chosen the better side.
Well, we need the best on this side, so I'm glad you made the switch. Ashley, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name's Ashley Eklund. I graduated Center in 2013, and then I went on to law school at Indiana University in Bloomington, which is Maurer School of Law now. And Indiana kept me after that. I moved to Madison, Indiana, which is a small town on the southern border, about an hour away from Louisville. So I'm an oddball out in a couple different ways here. Madison is a very small town, actually probably I've never run the numbers, but I'm going to guess about the size of Danville. So obviously stayed in a kind of a small community, and I also primarily do criminal defense work in related areas with expungement, driver's licenses, things like that. But I'm part of a firm that is a large firm for the area. We have 6 different attorneys at this point, and the firm does everything from appeals to personal injury work to workers' comp, social security, disability. So I'm like one part of the machine that kind of makes his holistic law firm run that you really need in those small towns. So that's where I'm at now.
Well, that's great. And I mean, obviously, Zach and Barrett, you guys are so close to Danville, that it seems like an obvious choice for you guys to go to center, but clearly you had other options. Why did you guys ultimately decide to go there?
I'll step in. I decided to go there because I basically got the largest scholarship there, and I had been looking at smaller schools, primarily in North Carolina. I got accepted and got a scholarship at Wake Forest. Same thing at Davidson. Same thing at Richmond. But Center made me a pretty good hometown discount offer. It also gave me the opportunity to play soccer, which I decided not to play soccer. I ended up playing on the golf team. So that actually ended up being one of the best parts, I guess, of my, last 25 years, is that I was on that golf team, and it created the friendships and bonds that I still have today. So I think that was a big part of it, was just my familiarity with Center. I knew it was an excellent institution, and I got a great opportunity to go there, both monetarily and socially.
That's excellent. What about you, Barrett?
My dad went to Center, 25 years before I did, or 20 years before I did. The one thing he said was that the people that graduate from Center run the state of Kentucky. He's a lawyer. He's been a lawyer for 35 years. His friends are the judges now. They're the heads of the large firms. And these are the guys and girls that he met when he was 18 at Center College's campus. So I'm one of 4. He wanted at least one kid to go to Center. I was the oldest. They gave me a scholarship. It was really a no-brainer. I played tennis at Center all 4 years, enjoyed that. And now that I'm close to 40 years old, and I've been out from Center 15 plus years now, I am seeing that the people that I graduated with are now, even at our age, they're in seats of authority, of power. I have friends that are Commonwealth attorneys, friends that are running for judgeships, friends that are making partner at some of these large firms, and it's wonderful. These guys and girls I can text. I'm Facebook friends with them, and so it has shaked out the way my dad has said that. The biggest thing with Center is the connections you make, and then the lifelong connections that benefit your career, throughout the rest of your life.
Well, and for, all of us here, it's been, 15, 20 years for many of us, since we were there. And now we are the adults in the room. And we have all kind of followed the trajectories that are putting us in positions of leadership and putting us, as attorneys where we want to be. And so, Barrett, you're absolutely right. Being able to, form those connections while we're there, but also knowing that we have a wide net of Center alum that we can contact, and lean on as we continue to grow throughout our careers. What about you, Andrew Mize?
I would tell you, it's interesting because I actually attended high school in Indiana and went to a military boarding school that was Culver Military Academy. So when I was graduating from there, I had a decision to make, applied all across the country, and it came down basically to VMI, Virginia Military Institute, or coming back home and going to Center. And I was interested in coming home. I know that I wanted to go to the best school that I could reasonably. And so I'll echo what Barrett said, because Center was not only academically rigorous, but it's kind of the who's who from Kentucky. There was another individual, Drew Settles, who I went to school with in Culver, and he actually recommended Center highly and took me down there on a visit, where I actually ended up meeting individuals who would later become my fraternity brothers in Beta Theta Pi. So that kind of sealed the deal. And when I graduated from high school, went down to Center, and it was one of the best decisions of my life. So.
And what about you, Ashley?
I'm glad they were back on campus by the time you got there.
Barely.
And then I think they were gone not long after.
That's true.
It
Yep.
happens. It happens.
Yeah, we had some of those. I got pulled in with sports as well, actually. I was involved with cross country and track teams in high school. And I had done, I love that center does where you can stay overnight with a student and get to be involved with them, especially one that's in your field. And so I did an overnight visit with someone that had been on the cross country team in the fall. And then in the spring, when I was looking to try to like kind of make my final decision, I went out and it was just me and my family, or my one of my parents went out and just kind of we met up with a friend of mine who was I think a junior at the time, who I knew from high school that was there, and we were just walking around just seeing the campus together, and we ran into students from the cross country team that remembered me from the fall when I had been there, and they introduced me to other track people that they were out with, and it just felt like once I was there, I was like, I've been here once and I already have this network and this connection, and just the realization that the people that center brings in are people that have like-minded interests but are also looking to develop those relationships and engage. And I think after that, I mean, my decision had been pretty close, and we came home that day and I was like, I feel like I'm already there. Like I didn't realize the decision had been made, but I realized that I already kind of had that place there, and so that's when I settled on center.
And I had a similar experience where I visited center as a senior in high school and was just blown away by the people that I met and just how immediately I felt comfortable there. I came from a high school that had 2,500 students there. So to go to a college campus that had 1,800, where a quarter of them were not even on campus at any given time because they were studying abroad, like it's amazing. Just yeah, the connections and the overall vibe of the campus. It's, you go there and you immediately feel like you're at home.
Yeah.
So that's, a very, very similar experience. So let's talk a little bit about why you guys wanted to become lawyers in the first place. I know, Barrett talked a little bit about legacy, both in terms of having family go to center, as well as having family be lawyers. But what continued to draw you to pursue your legal career? Anybody who wants to?
Our family yeah, our family's pretty much all lawyers. So the law thing was that was genetic. I'm one of three boys in my family. We're all lawyers. My dad's one of four. They're all lawyers. So that was going to happen. Uh, but my dad knew that center prepared him for the rigors of law school. And I went to law school feeling like I could handle it. I'm sure everyone here can talk about how scary the first few days of law school is. You think that you don't know anything. You think everybody already knows how classes are going to go. They know how to practice law. When everybody's kind of feeling the same way. I did feel pretty bad the first week, but once we kind of got into the flow of things, I could, the coursework at center certainly prepared me for anything at law school threw at us. So yeah.
I'm on the completely opposite end. My family's all in the medical field. So the lawyer thing was very out of left field coming in for my family. But my parents divorced when I was in middle school, and it was a long, drawn out process. It did not inspire me to practice family law once I became a lawyer, but at the time, it did inspire me because I felt like where the decision ultimately fell by the judge was a poor decision and didn't seem to make sense. Even now, I still don't agree with the decision. But practically, what I told myself was, well, if I think that it can be done better, then I should be willing to do it. And so that really inspired me to go in the direction of law. And then I looked for legal related activities in middle school and high school, such as the KYA program and that the YMCA does and things like that. And pretty much, and then also our school had a teen court program where you would be the sentencing court for juvenile cases. And effectively, what I found out was I love being in a courtroom. And so, from kind of a desire to be the one willing to step up and take that step uh, to finding out that this is the environment I love, it was pretty clear where I was going.
That's an amazing mindset to have going in it, especially having your formative years having been decided in a courtroom. And knowing that you want to make that difference for someone else, whether it's family law or in personal injury or criminal defense, you are going to have such a profound impact on lives across the board for everybody that you're serving. So that's a great story for why you decided to become a lawyer. Uh-oh, Mize,
So
Here you go.
I'll chime in. I didn't want to interrupt anybody else. I went to center and expected to be a doctor. I spent my first semester, I think, in biolab, and realized I was doing 4 hours of extra work a week for 1 extra hour of credit, and decided that was insane. I was like a math science kind of nerd in high school, and then but I did performing, basically debate and performing arts stuff when I was in high school, and so I always kind of had, I guess, a flair for the drama, and was like, well, law school seems easy enough to get into, so I switched over and became an English history major, and after about a year and a half of that, I realized I was never going to be a professor. So I was like, okay, it seems to be law school was the answer. But my dad was a judge in Danville and Harrodsburg. So I kind of grew up around a lot of lawyers. I worked for a lawyer for 2 years when I was in college that was local. And so I kind of got a taste for it and decided like this made sense. And so that's how I ended up deciding to go to law school. I think it more found me than I found it. It more chose me than I chose it. And I'm glad I did.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be able to have that experience before committing to law school, to actually spend some time working at a law firm and recognizing, yes, this is the environment or isn't the environment that I want to be in. Andrew, I think you were saying something, but your microphone wasn't picking it up.
Oh, sorry about that. I was in a similar situation to a degree as Ashley, where there were no lawyers in my family whatsoever. I grew up in Versailles, Kentucky, which is maybe an hour away from Danville. But by the time that I was my senior year at Center, I knew that I wanted to help people and I wanted to find something to do that, and I wanted to find basically the most direct way that I could make an impact. And it seemed to me that it was obvious that law was really the way to do that and to help people. When I graduated Center for my first year of law school, I actually went to Vermont Law School to try and do environmental law with the idea of helping the environment, and quickly decided that I wanted to transfer back down to Kentucky and U of L with a focus on the plaintiff side and also criminal defense to do that. So I think the entire idea of helping people in the most meaningful way, and of course, the idea of making good living is great. You can make money doing all kinds of things. It's just a question of what kind of impact you can have. So I think that's what led me there.
Well, and what's interesting about each of your stories is it is part of what Center is known for each of you for a degree. Barrett, you come from a legacy, and Center has a lot of legacy. It's been around since 1819. There are families where generation upon generation of students have chosen to go to Center because that's what their family has done. But also it feeds into what Ashley was talking about, and what ultimately what you're talking about, where you have the desire to do well for others and that service for others. And that mentality is something that each of us were met with on day one of our Center experience, where one of the first things that we do as freshmen is go and volunteer. And so Center really instills that service mentality as a part of their culture. And Zach, what you were saying, with having the opportunity to work in a law firm while you were attending Center, and make these great connections, are another pillar of why Center is so successful. So I think all of those things reflects a lot of the values that Center instills on day one, and is just a part of Center's core reputation. And all of those I think are really important to acknowledge from our Center experiences. So let's talk a little bit more about the actual education piece that center provides. Do any of you guys have any particular classes or professors that you connected with that really helped shape who you are or shaped your journey into law school?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. I know that we had mentioned it before you started the broadcast a little bit. There was one class in particular that really stands out in my mind, and that was constitutional law that was taught by Dr. Dan Stroop with the assistance of Pierce Lively, who was a now deceased but famed judge on the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. And that class was phenomenal because it was really the first introduction to really to not just the legal world, but to jurisprudence and to the study of this, especially focusing on privacy rights, which I litigate constantly today. And it was a fantastic class. And the fact that not only was the class so good, informative, and also rigorous, but the idea that it would be taught by, in conjunction with, Judge Lively, really evidence that center kind of networking in those connections, that can be so fruitful. So I know that stands out in my mind.
By the time I was there was a companion class they had to that was civil liberties. And it was similar where they'd study case law, and it's similar in the way that we did in law school. We had a law school, what I'm sure was a law school textbook. But that had a moot court aspect to it. So there would be an oral argument piece that the students that you gave, and then certain students sat as judges and asked questions. And we did that a kind of appellate argument format. And that was very formative for me. Obviously, I loved being in a courtroom, and that was the closest feeling I had to being back in a courtroom since I'd been doing teen court in high school, as far as the actual one presenting. And that class, I think just having that practical component was very helpful, building off of what we had learned in the con law the first semester. I think that was a second semester class. And it kind of gave you a sense of, okay, I'm doing the thing now. How does that feel?
I think it's funny to hear your all stories when I graduated in '03 because I don't remember these classes being offered. I don't think they were. When I was growing up in Danville, my dad was a judge, and so he would have interns from center regularly pass through the courtroom. And so I learned at a very early age that center provided these types of local opportunities that I don't think would be as accessible in a different community, or at least a larger community, or it would be harder to seek them out. For me, like Dr. Lucas was an English professor for years. I actually grew up with his son, and Dr. Lucas and I are very close. But like when I was at center, I basically took every class I could with him. He was hugely informative to my next career steps, just because he was so passionate about education, and he was not as concerned about. I can't say not concerned about grades. He was concerned about grading you, but he was much more concerned about your development and making sure that everybody was kind of learning at a solid pace and giving you a creative way to learn. So like we took a Flannery O'Connor course that allowed us to travel down to Georgia and see where Flannery O'Connor was born, and some things like that where you kind of got your feet underneath of you in places that weren't Danville. So I think that was a big deal. But the real thing for me was the study abroad when I was in Strasbourg. And I think it was Dr. Bradshaw that was over there when I was there. But getting an opportunity to go over there and kind of take some unique classes and learn in a different way, in a different environment, more intimate facilities, I think it gave me a taste for like a little bit more of what law school is like, a little bit more independence, a little bit more self-reliance. And those opportunities are not as, I don't think that they're as highlighted at big universities. And I think that's what Center did differently, is they really preached the value of studying abroad, even if it was for a short term. They really preached that value. And it was a huge deal. Dr. Roush would always talk about it when I was there. Many professors would push kids towards it, and it was a very valuable learning experience for me. So I don't know that necessarily a particular class, particular professor, but the overall general small school experience was what was really helpful in pushing me towards a law school matriculation.
Yeah, center. I did a lot of history classes, And so I had several classes with Dr. Steve Bowden. Sure, he's still there. He was a young guy when when I was
I
there.
forgot about him. He was awesome. I had him on a few classes. He was very young when I had him.
Yeah, and so but yeah, he shaped a lot of the type of writer that I am now. And well, I mean, I guess every class at Center, there wasn't a class that I took that felt like I could sleep through it and still get an A. It was actually the opposite. I kind of felt like I was white knuckling it through most of the classes because I knew I was trying to get to law school. So those B's were very scary, and uh, the student body was just so talented. I just felt like I was surrounded by high quality, uh, academic minded students. Even the guys that were there just for football. I remember I was in the Phi Delta Theta, which is kind of the football fraternity. It was weird. Tennis and football kind of had a lot of crossover in the Greek life when I was there. But even I remember the 6'6", 300-pound guy. Was just kicking my butt in history every week, and I end up reaching out to him to get writing advice. And I mean, it's Brian Coxon. He now runs his own financial firm, but it just shows you the quality around everyone raises. All high tides raise all ships. But yeah, Dr. Steve Bowden's someone that stuck out in my mind that really shaped my academia.
Well, and I would be remiss if I let this podcast go without giving a shout out to Dr. Eva Katavid, who was just phenomenal. And she was my rock going through center. And you talk about professors who truly care about the development of their students. She is someone who was just passionate about making sure that I succeeded in whatever path I chose to go in. And for me, I struggled with figuring out what I wanted to do with my life because you go through college and you get to senior year. And if you are not a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher, it's like, what am I going to do? And you don't know what other career options there are out there. And I couldn't find something that was really the right fit for me. But she was somebody who kind of coached me through that process and helped me figure out what exactly it was that I was passionate about and what my skills were and where I was going to thrive. And so as I put those pieces together, she helped me get to that next phase. And so, big thank you to her for that. But each of the professors that you guys mentioned have been phenomenal. And Center attracts some amazing talent on their team there. But Barrett, as you were saying, the rest of the student body is just as incredible, where you have talented students who are joining together because they have a passion for education, or they have been attracted because of the sports programs. But you're going to find that camaraderie there, and you're going to find your people, and it's an inseparable bond, and it's just kind of a beautiful thing. Uh, so after college or during college, what were some hurdles that you guys faced as you were preparing for law school or beyond?
Bar exam.
Let's talk about that. How was that for you?
It's like climbing a hill that's on fire with people shooting at you from the top, is how somebody described it to me one time, and I thought that was perfect. So
Excellent.
it's
Yeah,
it's it, it's truly hard.
I'm dual barred in Indiana and Kentucky. And so, fortunately, my firm allowed me to take Indiana first. And so, with where it was at when I took the bar exam, I only had to do the essay portion of Kentucky. I didn't have to do the multi state multiple choice again. However, the way Kentucky did their essays, I still had to study all of the material because they did the multi state essays. Um, so, yeah, after two, I will never take another bar exam again. If the state doesn't offer reciprocity, I'm not practicing.
Totally fair.
Yeah. I had a hurdle of figuring out what it was how I wanted to practice and what I wanted to do. Because I knew I loved being in a courtroom. But also at the time, I expected that I was going to be interested in having a family and having children. And I wasn't really sure how to reconcile those things. And I actually had a really great professor at Center, Amos Tubb, who really pushed me on that, because all of the people that he knew, he was from California, all the people that he knew that were lawyers were at big firms working 80-hour weeks and not really having time for families. And so he really pushed me to explore and make sure that this was what I wanted to do and that I was really committed and figure out how to make that work. And so that was something that I spent a lot of time kind of figuring out as I was getting started, or I guess going into law school, and as I'm going through law school, trying to apply for internships and jobs, how to make that work. And ultimately, I developed a mentorship with an attorney in Elizabethtown, Chris McCurry, who's also a Center alum that I met through Center connections. And he is he's an first assistant Commonwealth attorney at this point. And he really kind of showed me that there's in the courtroom portion you can do where you're still in a place where you can have a family and do things, that it doesn't have to be one or the other. And then some of the other attorneys that he introduced me to showed me that. And so I think for me, being able to figure out that logistic of, can I have both of these things and how do I practice law and do that? And that means, yeah, I'm not interested in doing the big law thing where I'm working 80 hours a week. And having Professor Tubb to really challenge me on that, I think helped me to focus myself as I was going through law school, knowing that I kind of had an area that I was interested in, or I guess a type of practice that I would need to better focus my passions.
That is incredibly helpful. And I mean, and I think so many of us can relate to that. And that was one of the things that was off-putting for me as I was evaluating whether I wanted to be a lawyer or not. I knew that I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to have a family. And it's just that much harder just because of the demands of being a lawyer. And so you need to figure out what success looks like for you in terms of your own life and be able to create that bar for yourself. So it's great that you had a mentor who was able to kind of help you navigate that. What about you, Andrew? Any other obstacles that you faced?
I think that the biggest obstacle, and this goes, I mean, both for center and for practice, and something that has been a hurdle and like consistently, is exactly what you all talked about, is that work-life balance. Because the center was so rigorous that you had to devote this certain amount of diligent attention. If you're gonna not only get the grades, but I mean, if you're gonna really learn, you're gonna absorb the material, which is the goal. But at the same time, you cannot do that 100% all of the time. You have to have a social life, you have to network, you have to do things, to really facilitate your passion. So that's something that was really important to learn. And that was something that, especially in my early practice, for the first 10 years of my practice, I was in basically a solo practitioner. I had found a mentor who would actually, by the name of Teddy Gordon, who had won at the U.S. Supreme Court, that I was fortunate to work with before my current firm. But even then, especially in that solo setting, where you're doing these big medical malpractice cases, it's the work-life balance. Because at the same time, I found myself working, 15 hours a day, and, like you said, you have to look what you want your practice and what you want your life to look like and be attentive to that. So I think that's always a hurdle, will continue to be in law, and something that center did kind of forced me to do and forced me to pay attention to this, because you can't do everything for everybody all the time. So I think that's the hurdle for me. So
It's a tough lesson, and a lot of us fail at that because we are so driven, and we come from families that are driven, and it's just been something that is so instilled in our nature that we see this is a metric for success, and this is a metric for success, and if you don't achieve all of them, then you're not succeeding. And being intentional and being mindful about creating our success and how we define it for life is it's a challenge, but it's so important to be intentional about it. What about you, Zach?
I don't have any challenges at all.
Perfect.
Just smooth right through. I think the biggest hurdle for me was probably getting through center. I think high school was like really easy. And when I got to center, it was, a real slap in the face. I remember taking Dr. McCullough's world histories course, and I think I got like a 3 out of 30 on my first exam. And I was like, oh, well, that's good. I'm going to fail out of college. I'm going to lose my scholarship. This is just the end of my life. And I think I underestimated how difficult center would be. And so by the time I graduated from center and got my grade point up high enough that I was able to get into law school, that was the hardest part, was getting into law school. Once I got to law school, nothing about law school frightened me because center was so difficult. And law school is much more the same class size that center was. A lot of people go to these huge universities and they go to these law schools, and we had 250 kids in our class, which is a huge law school class, but it was basically the same size as my center class. So I think the biggest hurdle for me was actually getting through center and getting into law school. Once I got into law school, it kind of sorted itself out. I did pretty well my first year. I started doing mock trial competitions my second and third year. I started, I just really enjoyed being in Athens. I figured out the simplest ways to take courses that fit my desired schedule and manage my workload, and figured I'd figured it out once I got out. So I think that really it was center. That was the most difficult part for me. And I underestimated it when I started. I did not underestimate it by the time I graduated.
Well, and I just want to let you know that you are not alone in that. It was a giant slap in the face for me. And I'm sure a lot of us can relate, where you come from high schools where you perform really well, you're towards the top of your class, and then you go to center and you're with everybody else who is at the top of their class. And you're no longer the big fish in the small pond. So I think that's a very relatable experience, and a humbling experience, that I'm sure a lot of us probably faced. So, and in talking about center, I mean, clearly they do a lot of things right. They allow us opportunities to study abroad. They create great connections. They provide an amazing education, and have a lot of those foundational elements that prepare us for life in law. What are some things that you wish center would have done better, or any recommendations that you have to center for them to best prepare students who want to become lawyers?
I'll take it. Since I was there a long time ago, and my experience probably is a little different than what people are getting now. I think that one of the things that I struggled with was when I was at center, like our majors were really specific. Or I guess actually not specific, it was really general. So it's like, you weren't really pre-med, you were chemistry. You weren't really pre-law, you were English or history or philosophy or sociology or whatever it was. There were not sort of second level majors that said, okay, at the end of your freshman year, you kind of have a meeting and you're like, hey, I think I might want to go to law school. I think I might want to go to med school. And somebody sits down and says, okay, well, you wasted this last semester. If that's what you want to do, here's what we need to do. We would encourage you to go take one course at UK or U of L or whatever during the summer to get that back, get prepared, come in next semester and do this. This is pre-law. This is pre-med. This is, wealth management. This is whatever it's going to be. But to be fair, that was 25 years ago. So, even when I go back to the campus now, it doesn't look like the school I went to. I lived in Hillside. I lived in the old fraternity houses and all that stuff. And I was there when the fields behind the fraternity houses were nothing. We had just built that the glass blowing center in the warehouse. So it's difficult for me to say what center could have done better to prepare me, that they may already be doing a lot of this stuff. But I think being really purposeful in guiding 18, 19, 20-year-olds who really were idiots at that age. We don't know what we're doing. We're worried about getting to our fraternity house. We're worried about who's coming over on the Friday night party, and where is the big party going to be on Saturday? Are we going to walk up and down Fraternity Road? Does somebody have a formal, whatever? That's what we were worried about. the education portion was what dictated the rest of our day, but the next steps of where we would take that education were that those were not as much of a focus for me. I probably would have benefited from having a more active mentor that said, "What are your goals? Why are they your goals? And how can we meet them?" I think that would have been a little bit more helpful for me.
Well, and to that point, I don't think Center has a pre-law program in place yet, but I do believe that it is under development. So I am hoping that that will come out within the next couple years.
Yeah, and whether they do that or not, I do think that I could have benefited from being like, "Hey, you're probably going to take some English and history, but we have these other courses, like this philosophy course would be really good, or this, whatever it is, things to add on that for me added critical thinking,
Yeah.
or a more precise writing skills. Because one of the things in law school that nobody tells you is like you don't know anything about how to write. Then you learn it in law school, and then you get out, and very rarely do you use the same writing skills. I think if there had just been more of a guide saying we don't have pre-law, but this is what pre-law should look like, you know.
Absolutely. Well, and I think the philosophy courses that I took were so helpful in my writing skills, and especially when it comes to legal writing, because as an English major, and I was even a creative writing minor. You express yourself poetically, and you explain things and extrapolate in great detail. But philosophy really challenged me to be concise and to get to the point. As quickly as possible while still covering all of the facts that needed to be accounted for. And so that was a piece of that major that I think was so incredibly helpful in my career. But I think you're absolutely right. Having some more direct guidance, and here are some pieces from philosophy and history and English that will all kind of come together and complement each other, and set you up really well for the next step for law school. What about you, Barrett? Do you have anything that you wish that Center would do to support their students?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I agree with Zach. I mean, I was 15 years ago. I don't know what programs they have in place. I do agree with what you said. We didn't get a lot of guidance as far as what classes would help round out a pre-law or a law route. They did rely on you to just use your 19-year-old brain and try to make good decisions that are going to affect the rest of your career. Maybe they do better with that. Maybe they don't, but yeah, it's just tough. That is probably a completely different school now than it was when we were there.
What about you, Ashley?
So one thing, I actually studied abroad my last semester at Center, so spring of my senior year, which is not the typical study abroad time. And so I was actually applying to law schools from London while I was there abroad. And it obviously made it difficult for me to go do a campus visit to any of those places. I think one of them I had seen ahead of time, maybe. But for me, I ended up, I accepted my admission to IU in Bloomington while I was there. And one of the things that was really helpful for me is that there was a girl who was also studying on the trip who had, I believe, a sibling that had been there. And she was able to give me much more of a detailed account of the school and what it was like and the type of personalities and people that were there. And then she ended up being there the year, like she was a year behind me, and she joined at IU Bloomington. And so one of the things that I think would be helpful would be having some type of network connection of students that are in law school, communicating back to people that are trying to make that decision. Because I think the decision of where you go to law school, or even if you go to law school, would be really helpful if you could get the current opinions of the people that are in law school. Because I mean, a lot of additionally, I think schools tend to have certain reputations of law schools and what they're like, but it changes so much with each class. So like being able to get a sense of this is kind of how the school feels now. And so I think having a cleaner network maybe to connect like the most recent alums who are in law school with the people that are still doing it, and possibly if there was a tighter community on campus of a pre-law community, that would help to feed into that. Because I think that opinion of just the students that are actually on the ground and in the classes right now is so valuable. And they don't get asked their opinions a lot because they're still students themselves. But I think that would have really helped me. Obviously, I got the benefit of it through someone at Senate already, but I think that would help students as far as evaluating their next steps with law school, like actually being able to have that built-in network.
And that would be hugely important because those experiences, I mean, I know that a lot of first years are going to be panicking a little bit. And that might scare some students off from law school entirely, but those are valid experiences and they can help prepare students to take that next step and prepare themselves mentally that this is going to be an even bigger struggle, or for Zach it was cake compared to center, but but that they can help prepare themselves for that next step. What about you, Andrew?
The center does so many things so well, and we talk about the rigorous education, and I mean the development of analytical thinking, which I think is the biggest strength. But this is going to echo what Ashley and Zach and also Barrett said. If I don't know what they're doing now, but some sort of more formal alumni engagement, I think would be really helpful because I know that lots of people were able to intern, especially with the judiciary in Boyle County. I was able to do just a real brief externship with a personal injury attorney in Lexington, and I found that was extremely helpful in saying this may be a career that I can actually do. I can do this, if I get the right education. So if Center could facilitate something, for every student that says, okay, you have this major, or you have these, future career goals at law school, let's do something that maybe is even a course requirement, that you spend X number of days actually in the law office because, we can prepare you for law school, but, to what end? What do you want to do with this? I think that something like that would be really significant. And I know that it would have prepared me better, and I think it would have emboldened the preparation I already had.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that they can do.
That's a great point. I think that'd be a great suggestion. And so I appreciate your guys' time today. And to close this out, I would love a piece of advice that you have for incoming students who are interested in a legal career. I know I kind of threw this one at you guys as a curveball.
I'll go. I actually will build on what you guys were just saying, but I think seek out advice from other lawyers in the center network. I've never been contacted by anyone who's at center to ask about my practice, so this is kind of really fun to get a chance to do it. But I think if there was, you know, sort of a list of us who now practice law that would be available, start to open up opportunities for legal internships, even if it's just, for a month during the summer or something where people get an opportunity to learn a little bit about what a law office looks like. Because the one thing about going to law school is they don't teach you how to be a lawyer. They don't teach you anything about it. And so you think going to law school is this one thing. It's really just like another version of college. And then you get into the real world. And most of us, like, I didn't know what I was going to do when I graduated from law school. I had no clue. I just happened to get a job. And I was like, okay, guess I'm an insurance defense lawyer now. But like, there's nobody that can sit down and go, here are the hundreds of ways you can practice law. And if you think you want to do this, like, it might be good to throw yourself into a drama class if you want to be a trial lawyer, not because you want to take drama, but because you want to learn what it's like to stand in front of a crowd and have to sound confident whenever you're arguing, things like that. But I think seeking out the large network of lawyers that we have, if you're thinking about doing that, this up with current students and allow us to, mentor from afar.
And I think finding mentors across the board is huge. And going back to, the struggle that I had as I was a senior and not really knowing what to do, just as there are a million different areas of law that you can practice, there are a million different careers. And if I could have found a mentor who was not a lawyer, doctor, teacher, but somebody who was just had a job and have like a list of careers that exist, and then be able to talk to people who have these careers and kind of try to figure out what they are. I think that would be huge across the board. But Zach, you're absolutely right. We have a huge network of attorneys that have graduated from center, and there's no reason not to invite some of them to be mentors, or be somebody that somebody can pick their brain about what life is like as a lawyer.
I think probably building off of that, my advice would be don't be afraid to take a gap year or a few gap years and very strongly consider it. I think students that have been the type of students that we get at Center who are such high achievers, the idea of not going straight to law school, a lot of times I think looks and seems like a failure. Like that wasn't what you were supposed to do. You're supposed to continue your education. But I was the minority in my class that went straight through. And while I think it worked out okay for me logistically, I think my other law students that had a better understanding of life, actually having either worked a real job long term or for a couple of years, or even had another career. I'm not saying you got to have a whole other career before you go to law school, but just having some time when you're not a student, and potentially using that time to do like you could work part time somewhere if you can make it work financially, and then be shadowing these other attorneys and seeing other areas of law. So when you're going into law school, you're not just going in not knowing at all what you want to do. And I think that there's not a lot of support still for the gap year concept. And it just seemed so normal in law school. And the vast majority of people were not going straight through. And so I think just really getting to encourage that. I think it's a much better idea of what to do. And I know that I went straight through, and obviously it's hard for me to say that, but I mean, I do think that's a stronger opinion for students. And I would really try to drill that into the head of students at Center, that it's not a failure, that it's not a mistake, it's not a bad thing, that it really can be very beneficial, and that it's actually more the norm in law school.
Well, and I can understand how somebody might think that, it's slowing down their momentum. They have this college experience behind them that's going to just like propel them through law school. But having some real world experience can save you time and money in the long run because you know yourself a little bit better. You know what you're interested in. You know where you want to serve. You know where your passions are, and it can help direct that path. So I think that's a great bit of advice.
I'll go ahead and jump in here. I have two pieces of advice, and they're a little bit contradictory. But I mean, number one, I would say I would encourage students who are interested in this to be focused. Be like we've said, be intentional about what you want to do. You can pick out those courses and of course your majors, and like we were talking about Dr. Stroop's classes. Pick those that you think are going to prepare you and make you familiar with the coursework in a way and in an environment where you can really enjoy doing. And at the same time, I would encourage people to get outside of their comfort zone. Whether it's in terms of taking classes, like Zachary had said, for taking a drama class, taking a walking class or a center term class, and all of these type of really interesting things, because not only is it going to fulfill you as a person because you're doing something that you're interested in, but it's going to expose you to different ideas and different people that are going to enrich your life and make you a whole person. And ultimately that in the practice are going to make you a better lawyer. And, really, to be honest, as we all kind of know, can make you a more competitive law school candidate too. There's only so many political science, and history majors like me that a law school wants to admit. So, I would encourage people to be focused, be intentional about what you do, but get out of your comfort zone. Pick stuff that are going to make you diverse and going to enrich your life. That would be mine.
And beyond that, it just makes you a more interesting human being because if you just have, 8 million history, English, philosophy majors, you're gonna just blend in. But finding something that makes you, both for law school, but just in general, stand out is gonna make life a little bit more enriching. What about you, Barrett?
Two
Piece of
pieces of
advice to close
advice.
on.
Yeah. First, go to law school does not mean going to law school does not mean you've got to be a lawyer. Going to law school prepares you for literally anything you want to do. I know all of us on here have friends that went to law school that aren't lawyers right now. They're business people. They're probably business people if I was guessing. But beyond just law, I have a few real estate businesses, and the law has made that so much easier, so much more attainable, and saved me so much money in legal fees for paying other lawyers because I can write my own deed or contract or do title searches. The last thing is there's an app and website called Handshakers, and it's how you can connect to people like us And if the other people on the panel aren't on that website, it's how college students look for job opportunities, internships. My firm's on there, my businesses are on there. You can also just message me directly on Handshakers. I don't know any lawyer that's not going to be generous with their time and advice, especially somebody from Center. We want the students to succeed. I want to hire Center college students. I know the quality that comes out of that school. So you don't have to be a lawyer and get on Handshakers. That's my advice.
Well, and on the flip side of the you don't have to be a lawyer if you go to law school, you also don't have to go to law school to work in the legal field. So there are so many other careers that are in the legal space that you don't have to go to law school for. My career is a perfect example where I run a marketing company that does marketing for lawyers. Like I just work with lawyers and I get to work within the legal space and work alongside some of the best legal minds in the country without ever having to take the bar exam. And I'll tell you what, that's really nice. And to not have to pay off student loans for law school, also really nice. So
I'm glad you didn't bring that topic up.
and a little dagger in there. But there are so many opportunities, and Center is a phenomenal place to have that foundation to go into a career, whether as a lawyer or a paralegal or in marketing or in business or real estate. I mean, so many of us have different stories that have led us to the same space. But I'm sure all of us would be happy to be resources for anybody who is listening to this podcast and thinking about Center or thinking about a career in law. So I want to thank each of you so much for coming on the podcast today to share your experience.
Yeah, thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Lindsay.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for
It was a
having
lot
us.
of fun. Appreciate you doing it.